Good morning there. How is everybody today? Wonderful to see you here. Hopefully all living. Alright, that's really cheesy but fun. I enjoy being a bit of a whack job. Keeps my day all the more interesting. There's everybody. I got the chat. Very cool. So, good morning to all. Glad you could join us on this fine day. And I thought it fitting to share just a little bit of Big Drum Bear's life in the past. I thought there could be some interesting things to extract and share. We've talked a lot about encouraging things recently. And sometimes, in order to truly encourage, maybe we have to go to a dark place in order to do that. Oh, dropped my pen. Gotta have my pen handy. You never know. I'm gonna keep dropping out of frame. You never know when you might want to write an idea down. Have a pad of paper handy. But yeah, I've had some interesting times in my life, and I've had plenty of experience going through the process of experiencing fear for different reasons. And at other times in my life, I've been told that there's the passage in the scripture that said God has not given us a spirit of fear. And so that's impacted me in different ways to think about it. Let me pop this over this way. Yeah, always trying to line up those shots to make it look nice. But I tend to do that once the show's begun. Hope everybody's having a great morning here. We'll get into some more fearful details in a little bit here. Kick is here. Big Riggins here. Kodiak, Mr. Nicktown. J-Ran, what's happening? Sergeant Peterson, good to see you, sir. Boulder Bear, what's happening, man? Patriot Bear, I know who you are. Dom Tough, of course, first in the room. Let's see here. Trevor Warner's up in here. Let's see. Is that oh, Glampin. Almost missed you. Liberty Snake. David, Analog. Philo de Say. I hope I got it right this time. Let's see who else is up in here. I think that's it that I see. I guess this guy. I guess he's too good for my stream today, but that's okay. I was too good for his stream yesterday because I was otherwise occupied. As well as Field of Bears, I missed you guys both. I had to catch some replay. Great stuff, though. Oh, excuse me. So, hey, Robot Bear. Glad to have folks joining us. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some Twitter activity because that's amusing from time to time. And there's, excuse me, for those of you that don't know, there's a place on the Twitters there. Nice. Robot Bear's going to replace Fen Computer. That's funny. You know, speaking of that, when Big Bear was streaming on Instagram the other day, I had a deep temptation to want to ask him and see. I mean, like he started reading one of my comments, and it just wasn't the direction he wanted to go at that point. Didn't want to talk about things that I was suggesting at that point, and that's fine. But I was thinking, boy, I really would like to ask, is there anything he can tell us about what the fudge happened with the whole Sven computer thing, because that's never been spoken of, and it's looking less and less like I used to think it was that it was a fake out and they were just leaving him off to the side there to do some sort of infiltration or something like that. But I see zero evidence of that at this point. Either they're really, really, really good at this point about keeping this whole thing under wraps, or it's not happening. Because I believe, too, another thing that really got me going was remembering that Not Gay Jared said, hey, Kodiak, welcome. Not Gay Jared said that he was probably going to be coming back, I think, for the U of M show, like before he left, that they were going to do. Yeah, I think so, too, Big Riggin. I think they've just not decided to talk about anything on this, which is really weird. Like, if they just left and there was some, disagreement kind of stuff, you'd think that they just say, hey, we parted ways, we disagreed on certain stuff, but they didn't ever even do that. They just don't talk about it, and that's weirder, I think, for a lot of us, because we're like, what the fudge? So it's, you know what? I will say this before I continue. This stopped almost right after the show yesterday, and I didn't have problems with it for most of the rest of the day. Maybe it's like the show. Maybe I do it in response to the show. Who knows? It's like psychological. Right. Some people have thought it. I even think it's quite likely partly psychological. Yes, Crowder, getting back to that, he runs a pretty tight ship. You're absolutely right, Big Riggin. They were raped by Kevin. That's hilarious. That's funny. Well, there's that theory. So I wonder, though, like, because Jared wasn't at the U of M show, that makes me wonder, like, is there bad blood there too? And they just don't want to talk about it. I get that maybe there's a Christian principle in not wanting to cut people down in a negative way. So that's probably wise. He doesn't want to do anything to denigrate Jared's future in some ways. But yeah, if that went wrong, I'm sad to see that. If that's really what happened, I think I'm beginning to accept, Daddy and Mommy are not together anymore, essentially. And it's bittersweet for me to make that kind of a joke. But no, it's like it's also funny. It's I'm trying to think now. Yeah, it's just weird. Yeah, I'm confused. Well, that's good. That is a good thing. I hope so. Maybe he just wasn't able to because there's family stuff too. But I don't know. There's a part of me that still wants to hang on, like a small part that still wants to hang on and hope. Is there some sort of like fake out that they're trying to do with all of us to accomplish a bigger goal, a long con in a sense, for the sake of, doing some good work that they do, undercover work? Because that still makes a lot of sense to me. But at the same time, it's like, I'm thinking it was just, kind of what it seems like on the surface. That's probably likely. So, yeah. At any rate, just that I was passing through my mind the other day. I just thought I'd mention that. And Robot Bear got my thinking on that going. So, before I get going too much into more what I was talking about today, too, the Twitter thing. Yeah, let's get over to Twitter and show you this excellent place we call... Yeah. Jared, he's totally a married guy. Let's see here. All right. So We the Internet TV, for those of you who don't know, We the Internet TV, at We the Internet TV on Twitter. You got to check them out. And I happen to get a tweet in here. They did this bit on, is your Halloween costume racist? And I think I'll try to just do a short bit of this. And hopefully it's allowed. Or will it even let me? Yeah, it seems like it will. It should. Oh, my volume's not up. Hang on. Some of you have seen this. Some of you haven't. Hang on a second. Hang on. No, do this where I tell you. Come on. There we go. I think I can show a little bit of this.
Whoa, man, that is not cool. Your costume is like super racist.
Racist?
Yeah, Mexican's a culture, not a costume, and you're culturally appropriating it.
Actually, it's not just a Mexican.
That's right, get him.
It's Mexican singer-songwriter and cultural icon Vicente Fernandez. Winner of 3 Grammy Awards, 8 Latin Grammy Awards, 14 Lo Nuestro Awards, and a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Yeah, okay, but still dressing him up like a Mexican stereotype, all ay, is like super offensive.
No, this is how we looked and dressed.
Wait, is that real?
Maybe the offensive thing is you considering a great artist like Vicente Fernandez nothing more than a generic
legit,
Mexican stereotype.
So fun. There's more to this. I won't go through the whole bit, but they talk about how you can wear a costume and not, to confront this stuff appropriately. And so I was like, is anybody going as Elizabeth Warren with a 23andMe results printout in hand that just says peace pipe approved? If so, I wonder how many folks will only give you powwow chow, just like Charlie Brown only got rocks. I got powwow chow. And those folks were cool. They gave me a retweet on that. I was a fan. I was digging that. So, yeah. Oh, I switched back to my thing before I switch back to my thing. Gotta love that. Hey, cool. We got more folk up in here. Clay Copeland's here, and what else to say? Andrew Bergen, good morning. By the way, Andrew Bergen, go check out his show from yesterday. He was talking about I'm going to say it wrong. It's an effect that happens. It's related to fluid dynamics, and it has to do with how you play the trumpet. Venturi effect. Am I saying that right? Something more than I knew about trumpet playing. And he's legit, man. He's got his bachelor's degree. Likes her the shield. Dude, you rock, man. Appreciate that. Venturi effect. Okay. I don't know. I wondered if I said that right. Yeah, Venturi effect was awesome. I really enjoyed that. If you think I've got some stuff to say about music, this guy blew it out of the park. He has some really good stuff. So be sure to check out It Slipped My Mind podcast on good old Andrew Bergen's channel. You want to check that out. He's good people. There's also, let's see here. I was just about to talk about somebody and I was trying to figure out what they're talking about. Let's see. Guess who? You were emailing someone. Guess who? You get 1,000 guesses and you would never guess who. Steve Pinder. You were emailing somebody. You're absolutely, Andrew. Anytime, brother. 15 now. I get 15 guesses. And 13 likes means 10 helicopter rides. You guys are killing me with that helicopter ride stuff. I don't want people pushed out of a flying vehicle just because they didn't like my stuff. Or do I? It is that day. Let's see here. All morning with this person up being on the show. Dude. Are you talking about who I think you're talking about? Are we talking about the colonel? The retired lieutenant colonel? The one, Steve? I try. I worked on it for a while. Thank you, Kikya. Let's see. I'm looking, Steve, to see. Are we on the same page? It's not. Okay, it's not Grossman. Okay. Keep hoping. But if you got someone pretty way cool, I probably wouldn't guess. Maybe it's not. Yeah, well, you did have him on the show. I just wondered if maybe he was going to come to you and do it in your studio or something, because that would still be cool. But I know he got busy that one time, so that happens. You won't be bullied into likes. You stand up for it, David. Go for it. Oh, I remember Kodiak. Yeah, I totally remember the... You're talking when he went to that conference and interviewed him, which is way awesome. That's a good deal, and I liked that a lot. Yeah, Steve, that's cool. I want to find out who you're going to have. I want to see what that's going to be about. That's an interesting thing to guess, huh? I don't know if I could. You know a lot of people that would not be in circles I would be familiar with, too. So, I mean, we have a lot of common interests, but there's always something unique about each one of us, the interests that we tend to have. Cool. So, that's that stuff. Feel free to follow at We the Internet TV there. I put a link in the description so you can get all hooked up on that stuff, because that'd be cool. They're good folk, and they're trying to do some funny stuff. Excuse me. So let's see here. What else should we talk about? Oh, by the way, We the Internet TV had a great bit. This person is not in your circle. I see, Steve. Interesting. Controversial guest. Could be interesting. I don't know. So yeah, I'm trying to think of where I was at here. I gotta quit looking at the chat so I can think. Wanted to talk about some events going on in my past that have led to where I'm at now, dealing with this concept of fear. I have... Oh, no. I remember before I got to that. It just popped back in. So I was going to say, on the We the Internet TV, one of the skits they just recently released, excuse me, was... It was this bit done about who's really the most offensive character on The Simpsons, and the fact that this character was passed over. I think you should go check them out. They have some really, really good bits on there. And they post a lot to Twitter, but I think there's more going on their YouTube channel, which I'm not familiar with yet. I'll probably have to get hooked up on that and become a subscriber. I've seen a few of We the Internet TV's bits that they've done on... they had some others that were really, really funny about, like, dating a feminist or something like that. Or some other things related to extreme feminism. Funny. Yes, so fear. Let's move on now to the topic at hand. Kodiak, you're crowdfunding a plane ticket to the PHX show. What is Phoenix? Which Phoenix show of who? Is that what you're talking about? Or is PHX something else? Oh, that's probably the one I'm thinking of. Let's see here. Kick you. Let's see here. David Duke. Let's see. PHX. That'd be awesome if it was Owen. If you're getting David Duke on that would be funny. Kodiak, that's cool. Yeah, help Kodiak go to PHX. Is that what that is? Oh, you're seeing Owen live, dude. Yes, that's awesome. Go to it. The ticket's waiting. You should go, man. Go help Kodiak. PayPal.me/feed Kodiak, or subscribe to him on Patreon. I got the links in the description. Definitely hook up the codester. Help him go visit the Big Bear. It's important. All right. So, when I was a youth, when I was younger, it didn't take much. I was fairly easily scared by the dark. I needed a nightlight. And I had a stuffed dog that had big floppy ears hanging down the side and a big tongue hanging out. And I called him Sad Sam. I had to be like death gripping Sad Sam. And I was totally freaked out by the dark. I remember going to visit my cousins at their farmhouse when I was a kid, a number of times doing overnights. And I struggled with, needing a little bit of light in the room, just something, because my imagination could run wild. I remember as I got a bit older, and I started getting into books when I was in grade school. There was a series called Goosebumps that I used to read quite a bit. And they were scary, and I liked reading those at that point. I was like, yeah, I want to be scared a little bit. You know, it's kind of fun. So I would read those, and then the stories were creepy enough. I would read them like when I was supposed to be sleeping, and I'd stay up with the flashlight under my covers or something like that. And then I'd finish the book, like I'd blaze through it and get done with one, and then realize that I was freaking out. So then I'd go read some verses of the Bible to calm me down so I could actually sleep, because my mind was racing like, is that toy going to suddenly wake up and come at me in my sleep? All kinds of stuff like that. Now, my parents didn't really allow me to watch horror films when I was younger, and probably a good thing. I didn't imbibe a lot of that type of thing. I did see a few scary images here and there. I think when I was really little, it was just me around at that point, no siblings yet. They would want to go out to a movie and occasionally go see something at the $1.75 theater. Imagine that. I'd take it for $1.75. It was a theater with only one screen in it. Only one theater in the whole building. And I'd go over there with them, and they figured they'd go to the late show, and I'd probably just fall asleep. This backfired on them one time when I went. They took me to some movie that had Sean Penn in it. I can't remember the name of it. It was back in like 83 or 4. Possibly even 85. Because I would have been 2 in 85. Yeah. So, some Sean Penn film, and he dropped some F-bombs, right, at some point. They thought I was going to sleep. No, I was awake, and I heard it. And in the theater, I started yelling it, just repeating exactly what he said, yelling F-bombs, and I didn't know what it meant. They were mortified. They sank down in their seats. The people all over the theater started busting out laughing. So a week later, they tell me a good friend of theirs came by the house, and they were talking and said, yeah, I went to this movie like about a week ago, and it was some Sean Penn film, and he's dropping an F-bomb. Then some little kid pops out and is tries repeating the whole thing. And it's like, oh yeah, that was going on. I have no idea who that was. We stayed home that night. No, I'm sure they didn't say that, but very funny story. I still enjoy. But yeah, that was me going to movies late at night. Most of the time I slept, I guess, but in that case I did not. It didn't work out so well. But I think they saw, maybe I'm wrong about that. I could have sworn they saw Alien or one of those types of things when I was little and didn't know. I would sleep through it or that kind of whatever. Could totally be wrong, but I could have sworn I went to a few different movies with them. I don't have memories. I can't see that vividly in my head. There's some things like from that age that I still have little pictures of in my mind. I can see clear images, and it's not like things that are from photographs, right? It's like first person perspective, and you could say, well, your mind fills it in, but I think I do have bits and pieces, like just tiny little flashes of something. I have one where I'm in our kitchen, and I'm walking to my grandpa, my dad's dad. That guy. Right there. That one. Yeah. He's there in the foyer of our house. Like, you come in the front door and you either go you either go right into the kitchen or straight head down to the basement. And he's coming in the front door, and I'm walking from the kitchen to him, and I can't be more than like one, maybe a year old, but I do see that memory rather clearly. There are some pictures of when I was that age, but I don't know of any picture anywhere that's that image. So that I'm fairly certain that's got to be from a memory. But yeah, sporadic bits and pieces that I can remember from that far back. But I do remember. How would I say? I don't remember specific movies that we went to, but I know I probably saw some scary things here and there, but I didn't I didn't register it as much. So at least that's just to say the contrast between they did take me when I was very young to go to scary movies, but then when I was old enough to understand what was going on, no, they didn't. Now, I do remember that at a fairly young age, I think they brought home the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I was probably around 10. I had to be at least 10, maybe 11. And my brother, my second youngest brother, he was absolutely mortified by Tim Curry's character in that film. He was just screaming every time the sweet transvestite came on the screen. My brother Ben would freak out, and I couldn't understand why. I was like, it's just silly. Isn't that scary? He's very silly, and I didn't understand what was going on in the movie at all, and but yeah, that was a weird one. I'm trying to figure out why they allowed us to watch that, and I'm sure my mother would probably deny. We never did that. It's like, no, I distinctly recall I did see it at maybe it was 11 or 12, possibly, but yeah. Just strange, just bizarre that we watched that. But that wasn't scary to me, and it wasn't supposed to be. It was a comedy. But it's weird. That's kind of the idea I'm getting to here. There were certain things that were not scary to me, but were scary to a lot of other people. And then things that were scary to me, but weren't scary to a lot of others. It's a weird thing. So there were occasions where I was concerned about not having the family around, like if I got separated from them or something for too long, like, am I going to be able to make it back? One of my cousins and I stuck in the middle of the cornfield. We were going out, running into the fields, playing. A bunch of the cousins going, doing, just hanging out. And we got lost toward the middle. And I was getting nervous. I'm like, are we going to make it back? Are we going to be able to figure out where we're at? Because I can't tell which direction's which at this point. I don't know where we are. But somehow one of my cousins, she knew which way to go. She's like, just go one direction and eventually you'll get out, just pick a route, and we'll get out of there. So I remember being scared by things like that. I remember toward my mid-teen years really starting to get a nervousness about alien abduction, right? I was aware of more and more materials related to aliens and the possibility that they were real, and that, I think the X-Files series had come out, and occasionally I'd watch some of those, but then I go to bed. Was Uncle Dan babysitting when I watched Rocky Horror Picture Show, dear? Is that what you were saying? No, I think it was Mom and Dad that were there, and we watched it with them. That's that's a weird part. I don't know how that one got by them, like that they thought that was an okay idea. Yeah, the early X-Files were flippin' scary. You're absolutely right, Kikya. Oh, that's messed up as crud. Philo Dese. That's rough. Yeah, our Rocky Horror Picture Show is a classic. It's true. Oh, It. No. I never saw It as a kid. That's the thing. I never watched It. Not to my knowledge. Beautiful Lady Bear was talking about that. No, I don't have any memory. I don't have any memory of having seen that until you and I watched it a year or two ago. Excuse me. A lot of horror films I never saw until I was older. I think maybe, where was I? The alien abduction thing was pretty serious because I would have some pretty deep anxieties, like trying to get to sleep. And I had a lot of practice trying to calm myself down and force myself to get some sleep. But at one point, my brother Ben and I had a room in the basement of my folks' house. And my dad redid this whole section of the basement, and instead of having concrete floor, he put down like adhesive tiles. he cut a window frame, like an egress window, into the wall, and put an actual full window that you can, the wheel out and extend out kind of thing. It would go like on the side kind of thing. It was neat. It would open all the way, and all we'd have to do is pop the screen out and we can get out of there. But at the same time, and it was, if you're coming at it from outside, right, it's almost like right at ground level. So, excuse me, that made me a little disturbed. Creatures could run by that at nighttime sometimes, and that was a little freaky, especially when my mind was focused on, what if they decided to come for me? Are they going to probe me? What's going to happen? How's this going to work? Because they always talk about the probing. I don't know what to do with this, just a little concerning. So I sat up a number of nights thinking about that and trying to teach myself not to think about that. My mother had this thing she used to do, where she would say, you got to hold your breath when you go by a cemetery or the evil spirits will get in, and I was pretty young when she threw that one out there, just being a goofball. And I kind of took it semi-seriously. And even when I knew it wasn't the case, like it was such an ingrained habit for years, I would still do it, into my teens. I think I gotta hold my breath past the full cemetery. Sometimes we'd be going past a long cemetery, so I really had to get a deep breath. But that might explain why I'm such a bag of hot air now. But it was interesting. Weird little things that contributed to my mindset of fear and what I'm afraid of. In the summer times, like late summer, we would get inundated with ladybugs trying to get into the house, or Japanese beetles, or whatever the heck they were. That disturbed me, because if they were crawling on me and they got into an orifice, that would disturb me, because it would bring back memories of having watched Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And there's a segment in there where the Khan, the bad guy, played by Ricardo Montalban, he takes some, I think, admiral who's, I can't remember what actor played him, and then Chekhov. Chekhov's in this one. And he takes them both and puts this little creature in their ear, and it goes and attaches to their brain and controls them so they'll obey him. And so that freaked the crap out. He put it inside their helmets, right? And he forced their helmets back on. And yeah, that imagery made me disturbed. And so anytime the ladybugs were all over in the house, I'm like, they're going to get into my orifices. Just didn't like that idea. It wasn't good. Felt that way about ants when we had an inundation of ants get into the house or something like that, right? And then I got a little older, and there was that film, The Mummy. And I'm trying to think now. Mummy was not... There was a scene in there where some dude falls into this big vat of beetles, and he's just demolished by beetles. They just envelop him. And I was like, no, thank you. Not good. Not good at all. And so those images disturbed me for a long time. But over time, I got all these different weird images that filled my head as I was growing up. Things that I've been much happier not having put in. But as I look back at it, I'm like, it's not as bad as you might originally think, because over time, I had these things float through my head, and I had time to become accustomed to them, where it's like, okay, you know what? I can either let these things bother me, or I don't have to. It's totally up to me on whether I let these types of things be a problem to me. And so I spent a lot of time choosing to not be afraid and to believe the stuff that I was reading whenever I'd grab for that Bible in the middle of the night. There was no reason to be afraid. There were some things I was certainly squeamish about, and I think certain experiences I had as a youth really put me in a mindset to be that way. I know I was out playing catch with my dad once. This is not what was scary, right? Follow me on this. I was out playing catch with Dad. We were trying to do basic hitting with a softball. He was tossing a big old softball to me, and I was trying to hit it with my little mini Louisville Slugger. Well, one of the tosses that he made slipped past me, like it wasn't coming where it was in the range of getting to me, and it hit me right square in the face, right in the cheek. It wasn't like super hard, but it was enough that I was like, the fudge just happened, and I was screaming. I was upset. That was not good. So I tended to have an aversion to athletics and sport type stuff. I just wasn't as interested for many, many years. When I finally joined the track team in 6th grade, I want to say it was, that was a big deal. Joining the track team in 6th grade was a very big deal because it was the first time I'd really tried to get into any organized athletics and break through that fear, because that was definitely an association for me with anything of that nature. I mean, I could play games for fun here and there, but I wasn't a big fan of trying to do baseball stuff. And I just didn't have the disposition usually to be much more risk-taking and athletic-minded. The confidence element wasn't there. Music helped augment that a lot. Music was my go-to in a lot of ways. But I'd been doing music for a couple of years at this point, and then the track team option opened up. So of all the things that I ended up doing as my event, what would my coach pick for me? But the shot put. A much heavier ball than a softball. But in this case, I'm throwing it away from myself, not getting it thrown to me. So that was a plus. But they're flying around when you're out there practicing and when you're at a meet. So you got to be mindful of things like that. So I was the only 6th grader who managed to do shot put. I was the only one of the few that had the upper body strength to manage to toss that sucker any decent distance. And I ended up going to like the state level competition in 6th grade for our state to toss that around. I didn't win there, of course, but I still got up there. Tried discus. Discus wasn't discus and I didn't get on very well. I didn't get the technique down quite right. But shot put I could manage. And so it was little moments like that where I would have opportunities to gain in confidence in the midst of still dealing with certain things that scared me. The idea that I was going to die one day really bothered me. I struggled with that. Like, was it going to be painful? Was it going to be a hurtful death in some way? And I really struggled with that for many years. And it took me a long time to get confidence over that. Like when I was in Iraq, the first few times, anytime we'd be on a convoy or anytime I'd have to fly in a helicopter, I was thinking this could be it. This could be the one. And I was praying a whole bunch. And over time, I was like, you know what? I'm just trusting. I don't need to pray the whole time. I'm just enjoy the time. Just enjoy the ride. And if somebody shoots us down, they shoot us down. That's what happens. But at one point, I had a lieutenant who showed me a video. He showed me an execution video that was done by one of the insurgent groups that was in that area at some point, and it was not like guillotine quick. It was like delayed. It was slow, with dagger, and I was like, oh, grisly. And I didn't know what I was about to see, but I got that imagery. It wasn't like a movie. This was real, And this is what they do. And I wasn't prepared for that. A lot of other people could intake that and it didn't bother them, but that image bothered me for like 4 or 5 days straight. And still, after years after that, the image would come back and haunt me in a sense. Like, oh. And the worst part is my mind would then, use its imaginative powers and transfer that over to members of my family. Like, what if someone tried to do that to them? And that was gut-wrenchingly difficult. And the problem was that it brought on intense amounts of stress with those kinds of images. Any of the fears I've had, they bring on intense stresses that make it difficult for me to function, right? I think only maybe a couple of times in my life I've had deep panic attacks from things I was afraid of happening. little by little, that began to bleed away. And I was slowly inoculated to these stresses. There's still things that could scare me, probably, like from time to time, but I've learned more about how to keep my wits about me, even when I am scared, like to train myself to say, okay, yes, I'm feeling fear, but can I still function in the midst of that? Yes. There was a time when I was doing security at our local air guard base, and I had to check out one of the areas where I had to check out, it was a cemetery. I had to drive through there, just make sure it was the way it should be. And a lot of other people were disturbed about doing that in the middle of the night. But I didn't have a problem with it. I was totally cool. Like, I was fine with that. I actually looked forward to it. It was just pretty interesting to me. No longer was I feeling like I had to hold my breath the whole time I was going through there. I was far beyond that at that point. And I just knew that it was a place where, you know, the remains of people lay underneath the ground. It was firmly fixed in my mind that folks popping out of the ground or something like that was fantasy. And do I believe that there are probably people out there that can practice, you know, necromancy or other weird things and call upon unearthly powers to accomplish that? Yeah, I think there's probably some degree of that might go on. I don't say it's beyond the realm of possibility, but I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't worried about that being a happenstance. I was focused on doing my job. And anytime I had to go somewhere by myself in the dark, where that used to be frightening, now I was inoculated to that. Now I kind of thrived on it. Because my confidence level had gone up. And my sense of purpose had gone up. When I'm needed to do a particular thing, can I set aside what fears might be associated with it and accomplish the task that needs to happen? There's a number of times in the military where I needed to go and do something, and it was going to be a brand new experience. I was going to have to do something I probably hadn't done before, but it just needed to be done, so I needed to do it and swallow the feelings, you know, just experience them, let them wash over you, and still act in the midst of it. There's this scene in Batman Begins, the ones with Christian Bale, one of the first ones of them, where he finds the Bat Cave. And from a young age, he'd had this fear of bats. Because like in the opening scene, spoiler alert, right? If you haven't seen it by now, come on. Falls down a well on his property. And there's an opening at the bottom of the well to a larger cave system. And a bunch of bats just burst out of there and envelop him. He's freaking out. And from then on, he was terrified of bats. But he decided to use that when he grew up. And he figured if he could be afraid of bats and yet stand there in the midst of his fear and drink it in and still function, he could use that power against his enemies and prey upon their fears. So there's a scene where he goes into the what would become the Bat Cave, and it's just filled with bats, and they envelop him. And at first he's totally afraid, but then he just stands there and drinks it in, and just like, no, take it, take it. Yeah, you're feeling that emotion. It will pass. It will pass, right? And the more you have opportunities to face things that disturb you and let that emotion pass, or just allow it to be there without like tensing up and like, no, can't have this fear, no. the more you're able to say, okay, I acknowledge I am afraid. I am on high alert. And at the same time, I can still pay attention and function. You know, I don't have to react in a way that makes me function less, right? I don't need to react in a way like, so I knew a girl in college in a communications class that I took, and she had this insane fear. I mean, she even said it's crazy. She didn't understand why. She had this deep-rooted fear of unshod feet, naked feet. She was deeply afraid of naked feet. It bothered her intensely. In the same way, some people I know are like deathly afraid of clowns. I just looked at the chat. My lovely wife just got me. Am I going to become Ladybug Man? That's awesome. All right. That's the number one comment of this whole stream right there. Probably several streams that I've done. That's like one of the best. Oh, that's why I married that woman. Guys, girls out there. Wow. That's hilarious, dear. You got me. You got me. Whew. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, that felt good. Yeah. So I'm building this room under my basement where I'm going to go and don my ladybug outfit, and I will fight crime. I will be the purveyor of justice for those who can't seek justice on their own. I am Ladybug Man. Maybe there's a new comedy bit coming to this show. It's entirely possible. Paper. Pen. There's a reason I have these things. Ladybug Man. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I like it. That's going to happen. Yeah, no, you can't see that. The light blurs that out. That's going to be a spoof on here. It did say bat, not butt, just in case anybody thought otherwise. When I looked at the image in my monitor here, it looked like it said Buttman, but no, I said Batman. Now, my 9-year-old son would be laughing his head off if he heard me say Buttman. So, pardon me, I should be drinking that right-handed. This is a right-handed mug after all. It can't be an ambidextrous mug because first generation only had it on one side. Pender. Oh. Courage does require fear, Andrew. I think that's certainly true. In order to be of more service to those around you, this is what I'm discovering here. It's necessary for you to confront some of the darker elements of yourself, some of the elements where you know you're weak, right? Where things bother you. And if you think, well, I'm just afraid of this and that's all I'm going to ever be. You know, I can't look at a clown. Just can't do it. What if you can do it? I'm willing to bet you money that you absolutely can and you'll still be here, right? Wallowing in pity, like, oh, just make it stop. That doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anyone. You become a pile of mush. You now require help from other people. Right? Am I suggesting that we extend this even to the point of like constantly exposing ourselves to deep violence? No, I don't think we need to constantly ingest deep violence. I think we need to be prepared to witness it or engage in it. And I'm thinking back to Colonel Grossman that we were talking about earlier that Steve interviewed. I'll tell you again, get on Combat, get the audiobook. It's probably one of the most important things you'll ever read. On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel retired David Grossman. There's Gita barking up there. Probably had a dog going by. So those dogs have it figured out, right? They get scared on alert about something. They'll get scary back. That's their whole idea. They'll deter whatever threat they detect. It's like the sheepdog, right? Ready to protect the sheep. It's ready for fight. You got those fight or flight instincts. Sometimes flight is a good idea. Get the heck out of Dodge. But sometimes you got to face it. You got to stand your ground. Otherwise, it's going to keep coming after you. When you can do that, when you can be dependent upon to face a fear for the sake of others who may not have practiced that as well, you start to enter sheepdog territory. You are now more of a burden carrier, right? You are more of a service to those around you, and that is the thing to be. It's funny, jump scares can still get me once in a while if they're at the right times, right? But I've even practiced trying to inoculate myself to jump scares, not so that I'm, not raging in fear. I mean, how would I say that? No, I misspoke. That's not how I meant to say that. I've been training myself to not react. Yeah, I've been not wanting to react less non-functionally, right? I don't want to curl up and just at a jump scare or anything like that. I can't do anything. No, but I do want to react in terms of like stepping back, like being on guard, right? That's a good thing. Martial artists would want to train to instantly go into I'm ready to fight mode. I'm ready to do what I got to do. You do want that. You do want to have that responsive reaction in a sense, but not so fast that you can't take a split second to evaluate, okay, is this an actual threat or is this just a scare? Because that'll happen in this society. Some people, maybe they do need to get smacked so they know better than to do that to us. But a while back, my wife and I had the opportunity, a few years ago, to go up to Six Flags Great America. She used to work there years ago, and she really enjoyed taking me up there during Fright Fest. They had the Fright Fest in October, and they'll have people dressed up as frightening characters all over the park. And the makeup and costumes that they use to achieve this is phenomenal. It's incredible. But I think that's more of our fascination than anything is what's required to develop that effect, and they stage these people all over the park to just sort of walk behind, park goers and scare the crud out of them. But then they'll have haunted houses. They'll have like 5 or 6 like elaborate haunted houses that they'll put throughout the park. Dawn and I were able to tour several of them. We had an opportunity to go check a number of those out, thankfully. And we'd go into some of these. They had strobe lights going at certain points. It was really dark. I remember the first year we did it. The first year we went and did that. We went into one, and I just wasn't on guard yet. I wasn't ready to go. And there was a great jump scare moment at the beginning of this haunted house where we walk into the main door, and I don't even think it's started yet, right? I don't even think we're going yet. Like they've got stuff. And then there's this wall, and then there's a door to go into the main rest of the whatever. So we're about to do that, We're in this little foyer inside the building. Tight little enclosed space. Excuse me. Whew. And there's something like a picture frame on the wall, but it's blank. And suddenly, a panel just drops down, and a face bursts out at us through the wall, right? Like it drops down, and boom, like a big blue face or something like there's blah, you know, like that. And I wasn't ready. I was standing like right next to it. I was like, grr, yeah, it was awesome, you know. Just I felt the surge of that like initial release. God, gee whiz, you know, forced the heart rate to slow the heck down, right? I resisted the temptation to go at that thing, right? And get it. But I knew that's what I was supposed to expect in this place. And so we walked through the haunted houses, and a couple years in a row we got a chance to do some of this. We walked through these, and several of them were set up in such a way that you'd walk around corners and there'd be a new scene going on and all sorts of creatures waiting in the shadows, really macabre setups and things that they had going on in there. Really, really elaborately put together. It's pretty neat. And different elements of folks jumping out. There's a lot of jump scare stuff going on. That was the big one that gets people. And sometimes it'd be just the scene in general, something like, you know, a person getting operated on in some weird way that was macabre, and they're screaming, you know, and that's kind of horrific. But I was intentionally not scared throughout the whole thing, other than that initial, you know, face popping out of the wall. But other than that, I intentionally decided I was not going to let things scare me. You know, I was going to expect what was coming. And you might think that takes the fun out of it. And in some ways, yeah, it might, you know. But I wanted to practice just being in the mindset that something was getting ready to jump out at us at any given time, you know, and to practice not allowing my body to react as much as I could. And I noticed an improvement the second year that we went. Like, it just had less of an ability to get me, you know, like, yeah, people were able to jump out at me, but even when they jumped out, I'm like, okay, all right. It'd be really funny is if my wife is watching and then she comes home right now and she's walking down the stairs and puts her hand on my back while I'm streaming. That'd be hilarious. I don't think she's going to do that. I think she's got other things to take care of, but I heard footsteps just now, and I was like, that's probably the dogs. But just in case it happens to be beautiful Lady Bear trying to sneak up behind me and go, bah! Which would be, you guys would crack the heck up if that was the real deal. I don't think that's what's happened. I don't think she's here. She's got plenty to do today. But, yeah. So I just found that intentionally taking the mindset of saying, I want to be able to face things that would normally scare me and not react in the face of them. I want to practice doing that. What I got out of that was that I am of more use, more function to the people in my life. I can discern between threat and silliness better. I think that's a good point right there, because it was good to do that in the haunted house, because the haunted house thing was obviously all fake, right? I'd rather react to real threat. I don't want myself to react unnecessarily or over the top to things that are not real threat, right? You would permit yourself to be. Big Reagan's killing me. 2% of the population can kill without emotion. 1% are wolves and 1% are sheepdogs. Interesting thought. Yeah, it's a good thing to keep in mind, Steve. Let's see what Steve's saying here. My friend Scott had to kill 3 people that were shooting at him. He was more upset that he didn't feel anything about it than he had about having to kill someone. Let me see if I read that wrong. My friend Scott had to kill 3 people that were shooting at him. He was more upset that he didn't feel anything about it than he had about having to kill someone. Sure. Because we expect that we should feel. And this is a great reason to have... okay, you're quoting Grossman. That's why I was going to say, that's exactly what Grossman talks about in depth. So I should have recognized that was a Grossman quote. Yeah, get that book, guys. Get on Combat. I can't say it enough. It's probably one of the best works he's done. But if you get the book version, it's probably more difficult for a lot of us to get through because it's heady, and he's a very scientifically minded man. But his reading is so much more fun because he's a goofball. I mean, he's a very serious guy, and at the same time, his sense of humor is awesome. It just makes digesting that information all the more fun. The book called On Combat. Yes, that's the one. Should be a good thing. If he's upset about it, then he's not without emotions. Yes, Kikya, but even if you are not upset about it, doesn't mean you're without emotion. It just means that you've learned how to inoculate yourself to the stress, in a sense, in that situation. You were able to separate in that moment the need to do what you had to do so that you'd be fully functional in that situation. There's a lot of people who actually report when they've had to do something like that, like take someone's life in protection of others, that they don't feel anything immediately. And they're concerned about that. And that is a double-edged sword because German police were trained to do that. This is, again, I think from Grossman's book, something he had talked about. German police were trained to do that very thing. Maybe Owen talked about this too. And at first, they were trained to, they were told you were going to have to do, these weren't Nazis per se, but they were police in Germany during the Nazi era. They were told you're going to have to go and do certain things that are going to make you feel a certain way when we go out and do it. So be prepared for that. Right? But at first it was making several of them vomit. You know, they did difficulties with some of the things they had to do to people that they took out of their homes or whatever other things they had to do, kill people, shoot them. And over time, that ended. They became inoculated to doing that. So it is a double-edged sword to do it, but you have to do it with, you have to inoculate yourself to certain stresses with a purpose in mind. And that purpose is to protect others that you care about so you can be of more service to them. And allow yourself time to process emotion. Allow yourself time to think over thoughts and talk about them openly with others. Like discussing things that have been stresses or fears that have attempted to hit you and you've had to react. You've had to do something to protect somebody else. Talk about those situations because that is something that cultures for millennia had done to help reintegrate their troops into their societies, right? We weren't doing that as much. It wasn't as much of a cultural thing. And that's partly why I think there's been so many high incidences of PTSD. Especially within the last 20, 30 years. A lot more of that. Definitely plenty after Nam. A lot of people had issues there. Good night. But yeah, we'd lost certain cultural elements that, gave people the outlet they needed to reintegrate after massive conflicts and where they had to see horrors or commit horrors for the sake of others. So, you don't want to be ruled by fear. But you don't want to be ruled by lack of emotion. You don't want to be ruled by lack of your natural responses. You want to be able to step back and choose how you're going to act, to be able to think. Don't disengage this. That's the opposite of what I say every day that I'm on here. I think my point in talking about this is to say that, you know, I've been through a lot of experiences that have helped shape how I look at situations. Sometimes I still do react a little more intensely about certain stuff. I remember the things I get scared about now are seeing my family hurt. And even dogs. I remember Gerby about 2 years ago. No, 3 years ago now. We were going to go visit my mother-in-law when she lived in Rockford. And we were letting Gerby out because we lived in this fairly big yard at the time. We were letting her go out to the bathroom. She never went into the front yard, almost ever, maybe once out of hundreds upon hundreds of times. She went within eyeshot of us, very close in our big expanded yard area. Went potty, did her thing. So we're having her go potty before we got in the car. She ran into the front yard. Apparently she saw a squirrel or something, must have headed across the street. The out way in the front past a lot of the main yard area. She must have done that. That's all I can figure. Because we called her and eventually she came running, limping back, just walking very timidly, right? We didn't understand what the problem was. She started to walk up the stairs back into the apartment where we were living. And we were like, no, we're going to get in the car and go, babe. I went up the stairs, picked her up and brought her to the car, put her in. She was very, very timid and like not her normal self. I knew something was weird. I didn't understand what. So then we're getting a phone call from our neighbor. And she says, hey, we just got a call from one of the other neighbors who lives out closer to the main road there. They just saw a dog get hit by a car. And we don't know what was going on there. It thought it might be yours. And we said, no, it can't be ours. Our dog's right here. And then I looked down and Gerby's paws were bleeding. Like there was blood running from between her toes and stuff. I'm like, what? And I picked her up and she had gashes of all kinds on one side, like road rash. And I didn't understand what the heck was going on. I'm like, this is bad. And I was beginning to worry, was she hit by a car? And it seemed like that was probably likely the case. And I think she had gotten up from it and run off. And the person, who ever did that must not have known where she went and drove off, I guess. Or not seeing where she scampered off to. So we took her to the emergency vet. And I was driving, and my wife was in the back seat holding Gerby. And Dawn is amazing. Beautiful Lady Bear is incredible because she has practiced not freaking out in those kinds of situations. She's more focused on, okay, what do we need to do? She knows how to de-stress immediately. Even if she might be feeling certain emotions, she's like, okay, well, let me focus on what I need to do. Yeah, it was getting a lot darker. You're right. It was in the evening time. So I drove and I was like really worried. Like I was upset for Gerby's sake. I felt horrible. She was our, fairly young, only year-old puppy, a little over a year old. So yeah, I was feeling pretty messed up inside, but we get her to the e-vet. They check her out. I should probably wrap it up. Phone's going live. Yeah. She was pretty banged up, but we got her to the eVet. They said, doesn't seem like there's anything internal. I can't remember. They didn't do much, but they didn't take x-rays or anything, but I guess they determined she's probably gonna be fine. Put some bandages and stuff. And I don't know if they gave us pain meds or what. I forget what they did that day. Wasn't much that they did at the event at all, but we just said, take her home. She needs to rest. And, so we just put her in our bed to rest, and within a day or two, she was back to her old self, but she was much more timid about a lot of things for a while. And nowadays, she's not. I mean, she can be skittish, but largely she's her old self. You know, it's like she got some road rash, and that was about it. Those wounds took a couple months, and they healed up. You can kind of see some spots where you can tell that probably happened back in the day. But I just remember my attitude then was pretty like, I don't want to see something happen to another dog here. We just had a dog that passed away the year before, you know, out of the blue. It wasn't a car accident, but it was still rough. No pun intended. I hear what I just said. Yeah. So I was still able to function. Struggling too, but I was still able to function and drive. Just do my job. Did we switch, dear? I don't know. I hadn't thought about that. Dressing up the dog. I might put Chunk in his Chunk shirt. We'll see. Yeah, I don't remember if we switched places, dear. If you wanted to drive and I was sitting back with Gerby. I think that might have happened because I was a little not doing well. But I didn't want to stay that way. It wasn't good. I wanted to be functional for my family, and I've thought more and more about that time. So, what scares you? What have you been scared by at times, and how have you worked to get past it, or are you still scared by it? Share it. Talk about your fears. Talk about those kind of things. Get them out, because when you talk about them, you're thinking through it. You have to mentally process it in order to put words to it, to write it down, to type it. Share something with us. You know, and bears, let's be nice. Let's not like use people's fears against them, but share it in the comments today. I'd love to see that. And I'd love to hear stories about how you're overcoming those things and becoming more functional to people in your lives. Yeah, you drove. We had to stop and you drove. That's right. I was correct. Yep. Scared of socialism. You tell him, Moomin. Yeah. So I was the wimp. It's true. All right, guys, I'm going to land this plane. It's that time. So I want you to go get on Owen's stream and check that out today and see what he's got to say. But until next time, remember, engage your mind, engage your body, and engage your heart, and seek to serve the ultimate purpose in everything you do. Share your fears. Talk about your hopes, your dreams, your desires to be that person in the lives of the ones you love that can be a guiding light. Live it real, bears.